Seventh direction.
The seventh direction is, it can be either your heart center or it can be creator. And I kind of look at it the same thing as when I'm done with the six directions and I go to my heart and I call in the creator there and I call myself to be present there. And then and we can talk about the seven directions and kind of my lesson on it. You know, it was one of those teachings that kept being given to me and I just poo-pooed it. And then one day I did it and I was pretty shocked at what happened. But so anyway, so the First Nation that actually, you know, came to actually start to create this sphere, or create the earth, or create the creation of what was going to be created, he said the Pure Nation came. And the Pure Nation actually laid the foundation and the energy for what was going to be created to happen. Because, you know, you have to have power, you know, you have to have energy, and you have to have something generating that energy, right? A frequency to generate that energy. And so these beings came here, and he said it was established by the color of white. So white, when you see, you know, not in the four directions, but if you're using seven direction energy, or you see, you know, seven types of flags, or I don't really know how it shows up, but he said that that's the first one that came. And then the second one, I think, I can't remember how it goes.
Yeah, my memory sometimes drifts off also on those
So,
things.
well, I know all the colors and the nations, but I don't know exactly. I can't remember exactly which one comes next. But I think it was the Green Nation that came second, and they were all the trees and the plants and the grasses and all those kinds of things. But I think there was something in, and they came with the soil. I think anyway. So they came and they put their frequencies and energies. You know, we're talking multi-dimensional. Not only did they come here, the plant come here as a being, but it also brought all of its vibrational stuff. So, you know, the thing is everything that came to this planet came from another world, and it gave permission to come here, right? This is the teaching. So that it came here to collaborate with all the beings from multiple worlds to create this original library planet for all, you know, for all. So everyone came here and participated. So the trees came from the tree world. And kind of get a sense of how this works is that the trees, you know, they go to the Great Council, right, which is the energetic structures that govern a lot of this stuff in this creation, and it's been hijacked for a long time. Maybe even like 400,000 years it's been hijacked from, you know, kind of like the original direction that it was going in. So the trees, you know, came here physically, and they came here spiritually, and they came here vibrationally from their world. And right now we're having a huge die-off of trees, and so we could say, you know, this shows how self-righteous humans are.
It shows that we're idiots for exposing ourselves to 5G.
Well, but this is the deal is, you know, we can say um, the trees are going extinct, right? All the forests are dying. And that would be kind of a self-righteous um, statement, you know? And the deal is that if the trees came here because they wanted to, right? And then they got trapped here because of everything that's going on. What if the trees were going to the councils and saying that we're done with humans and we're done with this experience? And what if they're choosing not to stay around and leave this world to go back to their world, because we've dishonored them, we've disrespected them, and they've put up with us for hundreds of thousands of years. And now they, we could say it's chemtrails and everything else, but if something wanted to live, it would stay in and fight. And if it doesn't want to live, it's going to die and pass back to the world where, it came from. So it's just kind of like the difference between thought processes of, and every year I move through a lot of the thought process that, I was lucky. I had a different kind of family and stuff, but, going to typical school and growing up in a really conservative state and, having racism in my family, caused me to have what, some natives call the white man's disease. They can't think straight. So, I'm constantly unraveling myself and some of that programming so that I can really kind of, be able to wrap my mind around some of these other thoughts. And so there's like my teacher, my private medicine teacher, he said, this was like maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. Anyway, I had to go on a long trip. I had to take him. I had to be kind of an attendant to him and take him to a place where they wanted him to come and do a medicine well ceremony. So he asked me if I could take him, and I said I would take you. So anyway, we were supposed to go there for like one day and come back that night. And it was so great. It was people camping out and all kinds of native ceremonies and singing, and they'd get the big drums out at night and do traditional Lakota songs. It was something else. It was awesome. And they had a big kitchen, and we helped cook. It was awesome.
How
So
long did you end up staying? 5 days?
Five days. But the thing is, like, when you're with an Indian, elder or medicine person,
Time doesn't exist.
And you say, yes, I'm going to commit to this, sometimes you forget that it may mean longer than one day because you're on Indian time. But anyway, so on the way there, we had plenty of time to talk on the way there and talk kind of on the way back. But he was telling me stories that came from kind of some of the more Midwestern tribes that had been recent. And he told a story about this young girl, native girl, and she was, preparing for her woman's ceremony. And so she went on to her first vision quest. And so the medicine man, basically finds a place way far away from people. And in some traditions, they dig a deep hole. In some traditions, you're naked in that hole, and you're not allowed to leave the hole. And there's no water or food or, there's a little bit, it pushes you and all of your senses and your barriers to break open, right? So that you can get the vision is what they call it. So you can have your vision or get a vision. But the medicine man, this is the thing, is he's always watching you and watching out for you. And he knows where you're at in your process. And he knows that you need to kind of crack a little bit, like you have to pass your comfort zones. But anyway, so she went in, and when she came out, she told the medicine man, the person, her person who took her through her vision quest, and she said, hey, I have to tell you this story. And she had never been to the ocean, and she had never seen ocean animals, right?
Okay.
I'm sure that her tribe was probably pretty poor, and they didn't have books. Do you see what I'm saying? So, and this was just recent. This has just been in the last, I think, 12 years or something like that. So she tells the medicine man, he said, okay, well, tell me what your vision was. And she said, at one point I was standing, and she said there were things like swimming around me. She said there were these things that had long legs and, other things. And so she was telling him about crabs and, octopuses and just all kinds of different things that she never seen before, and they were like swimming around her. She was standing in the middle, and they were swimming around her, and they were talking to her. And I think at one point, like, a turtle came forward, huge, like, ocean turtle, and started talking to her and told her that the ocean, the ocean tribe, the ocean nation, the swimming, floating water beings who live in the ocean have decided that they were done. Oh, this was right after Fukushima, I think. And that they were done, and they went to the council, and the creator basically said, the ocean beings said that they just really hated humanity. They just were done participating. They because humanity wasn't learning anything, and they weren't participating as equals, with all beings on the planet, because they all came here for different reasons to participate, and we act like we're so far above them. So they said they went to the council, and that the creator said for them to give their message one last try to see what was going to happen with the people. And if they continued to not listen, that the creator and the council were going to allow all ocean beings to leave this world, which means there won't be anything in any of the oceans. Nothing. So the thing is, like, we can say, oh, that's like a myth or folklore or a story, but to a lot of people, these aren't myths and these aren't stories. These are the water beings were asking her for help. They were saying, hey, and this is the other interesting thing. Sometimes each individual tribe, depending on visions that happen in those tribes, they don't really tell other people or other tribes sometimes. They really keep it, to themselves. So they're really hip on what's going on this planet, a lot more hipper than, we are. And then sometimes they'll share, but that tribe felt that this message was so dire that they actually started sharing it with other tribes, and it started passing around, mostly through medicine men, right? So they took it serious enough that, that they don't want they want the ocean beings to stay. I mean, think about if all these things give up on us, how horrible it's going to be.
Ocean beings and trees giving up on us and leaving the planet? Yeah, I think it would kind of self-destruct us pretty well. Of course, let's switch to topic just a little bit and go back into something you and I have talked about a lot on 5G and what in the world they're doing to our systems through this microwave energy, and what we can do to protect ourselves as individuals, protect ourselves as a common species, protect ourselves as living beings, and protect the planet as a living being.
Well, let's just throw this in. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get out of here.
Yes.
Okay, so also too, I want to say, like, okay, so this is a blog that just came out with the people who have the Mana Trust, and they're trying to get the Mana Trust holdings, into the banks worldwide. I mean, these people are really busting their ass to save the world. But 5G has to go. There's no way of protecting yourself against 5G. Unless you bought, like, a huge piece of property. But then, this is the deal. This is why, communities haven't really worked out well for me, is because people buy land, and what they do is they hide out on them and bury their head in the sand, so they don't have to deal with anything else that's going on out in the world. And I consider this a highly misuse of of their power and their energy, in order to stay in the world, and kind of, since they are sort of awake and they know what's going on, they should be the ones that are out there, like, speaking up and trying to make change, and, so.
There's two sets of awake people, though. There's the awake people who are doing good and the awake people who are doing bad. And to pitch battle against people to control the awake sphere, sometimes I don't know if I want to be awake and in battle, or if I can be awake and withdrawn and do things behind the scenes and not actually come to the point where we have to fight about anything. It's about...
Yeah, but why does there have to be a battle?
That's my question. Why does there have to be a battle at all?
Awake, right? You could just be awake and get out there and talk to people and teach people. I mean, that's kind of like what my radio show is about. And I'm not really battling anybody on my radio show.
Tell everybody about your radio show who's listening. You're on Revolution Radio?
Yeah, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show at 1 p.m. Eastern in Studio A.
On Saturdays. Only on Saturdays. And
yeah, only on Saturday.
Who's your guest this week?
Well, it's supposed to be a guy named Thrice, who's working with Richard, who was on my show before. And I sent him a message, and he's, kind of ignored me. So I think I'm yesterday's news. My show's yesterday's news for him. No. But I'm not going to take it personally. I might get my friend Gord, actually, to come back on. If Thrice doesn't contact me. And that's the other thing, too, is it's kind of rude, for people to do that, kind of flake out on you.
Especially when you have one show a week. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes a lot of work to book people and get things done, and, all the things that you have to do for a show. And I do it all for free. It's 100% volunteer. So, yeah. So I think Gord might be, and then you're going to be on Saturday, September 29th. And then I've got some other really cool people coming up. But anyway, so I have a lot of different guests with a lot of different opinions, a lot of different views that are highly awake, highly awake. So, what was I going to say? Oh, so I want to read this because, there are just things that are going to have to stop. 5G, let's just call 5G death on every level: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. So we just really have to stop 5G, and we just really got to hope that these people can change these financial systems, at least temporary, until we can build, better currency systems. Like, I want to go into the agricultural arena, and, I want to have agricultural based money. I'd even think about creating a agricultural, maybe the biodynamic coin would be like the first one. But anyway, I'd like to, have my own currency that represents the work that we do on our farm, because that's the deal. I think food should cost different prices. I think if you have a cryptocurrency for, industrial, commercial agriculture, right? But I'd want a coin for, like, biodynamic farming, which shows, how much labor, and we get that labor back, so our food isn't just taken away and sold on the market for nothing, and that we can't pay, to have the things that we need to do, or pay the people who actually, are going to be working on the farm. I mean, at first we'll probably have a lot of apprenticeships, but once they learn, we definitely want to pay them to be there and give them a place to live, and whatever gear and other things that they need, long term. So we don't want them to feel like they're trapped on our community. But so that's the kind of thing that we need to change. And I think, like, each country, has different assets, and they can have, different price on their currency. And especially by having it gold back, they'll get exactly the money that they need, the price that they need, that they put onto the market, because they're not having currencies that are fixed against them and establishing, their rate. They get to create their rate. And I really like Russia and the whole agricultural movement that they're the number one biodynamic country in the world right now, and they're growing, old school, beautiful, organic wheat, and people are buying it up all over the world. India, they sent like 1 million pounds of this beautiful wheat to Venezuela to try to just help them, so they can eat. But anyway, so I think, for me, I would like to have my own agricultural currency of exchange so that we get what we need on the land, because, farming is one of the most labor challenging jobs there is, and it is not equal, and people are going to get really pissed off about this, but it's not equal to somebody, creating an art masterpiece. When you're like digging holes for 12 hours a day, and it's really only work that you can really do, kind of when you're younger. I mean, I'm different. I'm pretty fit. I could shovel all day long. I can do some serious hard labor. That's the kind of lifestyle I like, but there's no way a lot of people could do that job. So that job is worth more. That food that's grown on that land in a good way is worth more than just, the average organic food, or because it takes a huge amount of labor. And it's one of the arguments that I've made in different kinds of communities, when they kind of establish, the value to things on a community. And, I am always putting labor and farming as, the highest valued thing on any community.
Yeah, and it's not how the value system currently works, because one of the tracking time is difficult in the system now because so many people waste their time. And to pay people on a 40-hour work week where they likely get less than 10 hours of actual production done for the 40 hours of time they spend is just institutional nonsense, and yet that's the way the whole country seems to focus with work. There's not enough work around to do, so they make work, and they seem to pit people off in occupations where one occupation works left and the other occupation works right, so that the net is that nothing gets done but everybody gets paid for working. What a crock.
Well, but I'm right, but that doesn't work on farms, because you've got people on farms that work, 7 days a week. They never take vacations. They maybe get, as far as cash in hand, they maybe get paid for like 15 hours a week. And they're working like 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And they're not getting paid for, any of it, and are barely holding on and struggling. And when their produce and stuff goes to market, it has zero value, because, the gas, more money was spent in gas trying to get it where it needed to go. And so the gas price ate up all of the profit for the farmer. So they don't even get the money back per hour. I mean, they don't even think in hourly wages. If they can stay on their land another year, their crops barely made it. Because, they've got to keep them alive too, through the course. You don't know what's going to happen to your crops. And so they don't even really think of hourly wage or getting a paycheck. They just hope that the farm can, be there one more year. They can just get through it, right? So there's always this relief at the end of the year that your crops not even enough, to make it through the winter so that you can, pay the nut. So the thing is like, there's just the jobs that should be valued are not valued at all. There's zero value. So anyway, I was going to read this because this is from the Mana Trust people, and so this is what's been going on. This is kind of actually exciting. So the Mana Trust is the world holdings of the people of the world. This is the money that was tucked away and hidden and kept from us and concealed from us. So all the Mana Trust stuff was released into the Mana Trust. There's a woman who, I believe because of her genetic DNA and lineage, is carrying out the release of the Mana Trust. So she does codes and all kinds of stuff with computer systems and all this other stuff to get the Mana Trust in all the banks worldwide so that it can get in the hands of the people who need it the most, start healing the earth, and start feeding people and getting people proper medicine and all kinds of stuff. So they got the money into different banks and areas, but then the bankers worldwide decided that they weren't going to spread the money out, that they were going to actually try to figure out how to steal, these are banks worldwide, the Mana Trust holdings. Well, they couldn't do it. They couldn't get past the codes to steal the money. So mind you, the Mana Trust money, these banks can't use. They'll have it in their banks, but they can't add it to their books. And they can't borrow against this money because they don't own it. And the banks will just have to utilize it for, more for humanity. So then what happened was that the banks were only listening to the Federal Reserve. So then the U.S. government finally officially publicly revoked the license of the Federal Reserve. Well, this was like a few weeks ago. Mind you, this license had expired several years ago, but officially they just came out and revoked the license of the Federal Reserve, I think, to hold or have and deal in U.S. dollar, right? So that they can get these banks out of the stronghold of the Federal Reserve to start getting the Mana Trust funds out into the world to the people who need it the most, people who are starving, people who are dying. And so that happened. And then what happened was last week, the Mana Trust called the bonds. So from what I heard was that these bonds, some of them didn't even have the right spelling, which means they weren't official bonds. And most of these bonds had already been expired. But the reason why banks were staying alive worldwide against, the whole economic system, which should have totally collapsed at least 10 years ago, and how they've been holding it up is they've been pulling interest off these supposed bonds through the banks to keep everything afloat. So when Mana, or whoever, the people involved, started looking at a lot of these bonds that were held in banks worldwide, what was most interesting about it is that the EU, the euro had, and so now I understand what the euro was about. It was about another system, but what they were going to do is issue a lot of bonds off the euro to put in banks worldwide to kind of prop the banks up. So they were in almost every bank, Chevron was even listed, the gas company, as kind of having their own kind of, I guess, banking system. But, on average, these banks would have 350 billion in bonds, and maybe 30% of those bonds were euro, EU euro. So anyway, all the bonds got pulled or got called in. So as of last week, no banks worldwide have any liquidity, which means if you wanted your $5,000 in cash out of the bank, they couldn't give it to you. So how their doors are still open, we don't know, because they're on zero liquidity right now, and all their bonds were pulled from them being able to do business. So they keep chiseling away at this system in order to try to get these funds out. And what we should be really doing is we really should be praying, hold on. Oh, we should be praying, that the people who are doing this work, be taken care of and looked down on. and, be given all the assistance that they need, in order to finish this last leg of, the marathon that they've been running. So anyway, I just wanted to read this blog real quick for people, because I got it this morning in my email. So this is basically what it says. It says, the trustee of the Mana World Holding Trust has offered the banks 10-1 in USD to replace any corporate accounts the Rothschilds pull out as a threat retaliation to the banks for obeying the laws and direction of the United States government. So we're just talking about in the U.S. right now. There's a banking battle going on. I mean, that's quite a bit. 10-1. Give us all your USD, and then we'll burn all that stuff, and we're going to give you 10-1 on every U.S. dollar just to get this deal done. That sounds pretty fair to me. In order to get it. So the funds held in the Mana World Trust have now been approved clean and clear by Homeland Security U.S., the BIS, which is the Bureau of International Settlement, which runs mostly kind of through the Pentagon, and the United States Trust and other various agencies. On September 19th, 2018, the Senate approved a massive spending bill for the U.S. and civil agencies for $854 billion for operational expenses until 2019 to avoid government shutdown. So the Mana Trust is helping to pay for the budget to keep the government, not in a bad way, keep it going, but keep it from having a total meltdown where people are rioting and killing each other because the bank's doors closed, right? And people can't get access to anything. So these people are all trying to really keep things going really, upside down on us. The U.S. banks are still operating with zero liquidity while holding over $19 billion in government-approved funding, which has legally been cleared with their financial institutions. So this is saying the Mana Trust has also put the money forward to approve funds to keep these, banking institutions going. So we don't lose, we're not left holding the bag on the nightmare. And then, people looting and rioting, it would really be bad. Okay, the Federal Reserve is currently not operating as their license has been revoked and their legal authority to hold USD has been taken away. The Rothschilds were unable to return liquidity to the banks as promised on September 18th, 2018. So the last chess piece of the game has been moved. What do they call it? I'm taking your queen. I forget what it is in chess.
Checkmate. Checkmate is when the king is fall.
Checkmate. Right. So, as a result, the RV reported to start today did not begin exchanges. The RV, as reported, will not take place, which means that we won't be able to exchange our foreign currency. Because, see, they couldn't get the money in the banks to pull off the exchange.
Mm-hmm. The banks are basically fraud.
Yeah. So, as of 9:47 p.m. EDT, September 19th, 2018, the banks have still not credited the receiver accounts for project funding. They are currently guilty of treason against the United States and the American people for failure to obey the direction of the United States Treasury. In addition, there is discussion that the banks will be brought under national control due to noncompliance with federal banking laws, gross negligence in their fiscal responsibilities, which places every American citizen at risk, and failure to pass stress tests conducted by the UST and the Bank of International Settlements shows that these banks are insolvent. The banks are currently operating as a terrorist cell within the United States borders. Domestic terrorism using fear to achieve a financial or political ideological aim. They are openly defying the U.S. government, bringing into question who is actually running the country. agencies and authorities have failed to enforce transfer regulations that directly affect the U.S. economy. The bank's action to defy the U.S. government are a declaration of civil war and domestic terrorism, as clear evidence has been presented to demonstrate the legal approved activity and authority of the Mana World Trust to trust funds into the United States. Latest executive order makes statements regarding the enforcement of all United Nations sanctions to block their finances and access to the country. Current sanctions have been levied since May 2018 against the Rothschild, Clintons, Obamas, Rockefellers, Bush, and various other members of the Dragon families for acts of genocide and crimes against humanity. So, that's what's going on right now. So we're at the last phases of that situation. And then once the Mana Trust funds, once the Federal Reserve's done, all this stuff's done, now it's just military action to go in and take over banks, really.
And so the banks have been given currency from the Mana Trust funds that they're not using, or they're using on themselves, or what? I mean,
right, the Mana Trust released funds into all the central banks worldwide, and they've been blocking them for quite a while, I think since like May, or they just pretend like they don't have them, or in a lot of cases the bankers have tried to steal a lot of these funds, but they can't get through the codes and stuff like that, and the Mana Trust knows who's stealing what, and so they've been sending people in to arrest the people as this has been going on.
Does this have anything to do with Neil Keenan and the stuff going on in Indonesia and Singapore?
Well, let's just say that Neil Keenan, I don't really believe Neil Keenan is really on the up and up. I'm not really sure he's an M2. So I think that in Indonesia, what they were trying to do is they were trying to use their money that they had that's been in holding for their people and their population. They were trying to use that to get a, I actually have it. I have mine. What was it? What it would give you is, and they started it, I forget the name of it. But anyway, it's based on the trust. There was like something like $500 trillion that the Indonesian banks had from the gold and stuff and caves and things like that. And they basically put it into banks. And then the banks went about trying to steal it. But what it would have done is it would have given everybody in the world a basic income of $1,200 US. And so I did all my paperwork. Like I actually have my legal document. It has my picture and my thumbprint and all that stuff on it. And I took it around to like several banks in the United States, and they just totally freaked out and wouldn't even look at it. Because, they're not going to, all the bank had to do was take my, it was the M1 voucher is what it was called. And then, so in Indonesia, what they were trying to do is they were just trying to give everybody in the world over 18 a national basic income every month of their life. And so this is kind of like where Hawaii was like, well, hey, maybe we'll move away as a sovereign country because, they've been voting to be sovereign, not part of the United States anymore. So Hawaii's trying to vote in, I think it's going to be like $1,000 a month basic income, which means they could get rid of all of the welfare, Social Security, everything. And when you're 18 until you die, you get $1,000 a month. Period. End of story, right? It's your money. And think about how that would change people's mindsets. This is your money because you're a human being on this planet and you deserve to have some of the assets. Versus, I have to pretend like I'm disabled and broken and go down to the Social Security office and beg for $500 a month in disability, which is not even going to come near to paying any of my bills.
Yeah, the whole system is a joke.
The mindset that would give. So Bridgette was kind of the first ones to start to maybe use their, vast hidden assets to, help the people of the world by giving everybody a basic income to start. And then if you did anything else with your life and you made any more money, yeah. So, I mean, I am really bummed. I knew this was coming, but I am pretty bummed that not going to be able to exchange, the foreign currencies I have and carry out a few of the projects, humanitarian projects that I built and that I worked on. But, I'll be okay.
How long do you think the current system? How long do you think the current system that we're involved in will hold up, knowing that the banks are now basically bankrupt?
Well, they have zero liquidity across the board, and this is worldwide. This isn't just in the U.S., but the U.S. they're hitting them harder. So, once the Mana Trust gets in there, then the banks will have money, in the bank to keep the doors open.
But they're useless. They're not. If they're sitting on the money and they're not doing anything with it, it doesn't do anybody any good to have given the banks the money. Why can't the Mana Trust give it directly to the people?
Banks have it.
So why can't
the central banks have it? Well, why can't they is because the Federal Reserve stepped in place and was keeping the money from actually going out into the areas that need to happen. So as soon as they get this banking thing straightened out, then the money will be released to actually clean up all the ocean water and the earth. So a lot of this stuff's just going to happen directly. And you can file a project. They're not ready for it yet, but as soon as they're in position, they're going to have a whole bunch of people working to accept, humanitarian projects that they'll be more than happy to give people money for. But one of the things that I've decided is I've been working, on a lot of the stuff that I've been working on for 20 years, a lot of the projects that I've been working on for 20 years and trying to get money. And then, it's been really difficult. And then finally I started getting foreign currencies that I could exchange in enough that I could do all the projects I want to do. And I have written so many documents and paperwork and all this other stuff, and even gone to a 2-year school to learn how to do grants and just all this other stuff that I'm not ready to jump through another hoop. I'm not going to carry out my humanitarian projects, and I'm not mad about it, but because I'm exhausted. There's just no way that I could sit down and write out a whole bunch of other major amounts of documents to another agency and wait for approval. I'd rather just do other things,
Yeah, it seems like the Mana Trust is not working on human scale with the beings of the planet. They're still working with the control systems.
They are on human scale, but the thing is that you have to liquidate these assets and turn them into something that you can actually give people.
Why can't we liquidate the banks and go to a different system altogether? We don't really need economics in a land of abundance. And if there is enough abundance to be able to pay everybody $1,000, why don't they just use the thousands of dollars to buy stuff and distribute it?
Right, but this is the thing is that there's not enough. This is the argument I had with a friend of mine the other day. Being and dealing with seeds and dealing with food supplies and dealing with a lot of the stuff that I've dealt with, there really isn't enough of that to go around, and you don't have enough people that are educated to actually restore soil and start growing food. So the problem is that the basic foundations of human life and infrastructure that the human life needs to do aren't even in place. And so you need a bridge for things to move forward. And
I thought you were the bridge.
Doing it, put them out of business kind of a thing. But this is the thing is like, yeah. So I mean, the thing is like, I really feel like everything's moving in a good direction. And this is the other thing too is like, I'm glad.